Hello and welcome, you guys, to day one of our challenge. I'm very excited. My name is Sarah Nicole Nadler. I'm your host. And this week, we're going to be kicking off a 5-day challenge regarding hiring for your business. So if you are brand new here, then let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Nicole Nadler. I am a business coach. I am the founder of the Go-Getter group here on Facebook. And I am also your host for this week. I'm going to be walking you through some of the things you want to consider when you're hiring your first employees. If you already have a big team for your business, you'll still want to tune in this week because I'm going to be sharing some of my best tips on how to interview, weed out toxic personalities, and really find the best culture fit for your business. Hey, Brianna. Hey, Ben. It's good to see you guys. Who else do we have with us today? Hey, Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming on live. I'm very excited. If you don't have the workbook that goes with this training, please comment workbook in the chat below, and my team and I will reach out to you. Haley should be coming on any minute now to share that workbook with you guys. It was emailed to you if you registered for the training this week. If you didn't register, go ahead and drop workbook below and we will get you that workbook. It is 40 pages long, you guys, and it has all of my best tips for how to write a hiring ad, how to do that pre-work ahead of time to see how much you can afford to pay your employee, what kind of employee questions in the job interview process are considered discriminatory. That workbook is going to save your tush. So you definitely want to have that downloaded and printed off as we go through this week's training. So a little bit of housekeeping. We did have to change the time of this this challenge, for this week, unfortunately, because I am unexpectedly out here in Oregon this week, and it was going to be at 7 o'clock in the morning for me, and I'm coming over a cold right now. So unfortunately, just for my own health, I did have to change the time. I do apologize if that has been an inconvenience for you, but there will be a replay every single day of the training. So don't worry, even if you can't come live, you're still going to be able to get it, okay? All right, thank you so much for coming on live, you guys. Let's get started with the very first things you'll want to consider as you are thinking about hiring an employee, and that is what type of employee is going to be best for your business. There's actually 5 types of hires that you can make for your business, which we're going to talk about today, but I want to talk before then about the prep work, the things you should be thinking about before you even consider hiring an employee. The first thing you'll want to think about if you're thinking maybe now is the right time to hire in your business is I want you to actually do a time motion study for yourself as the business owner. What are you spending your time on every single day? And calculate out the number of the number of hours you have spent in the last week on things like worker bee mentality, meaning times when you were personally servicing your clients, times when you were doing things like bookkeeping or adding up how much money you made that week, times when you were personally trying to jump on a sales call with a client or personally posting on social media. These are the type of activities that you can outsource in your business or hire somebody to do for less than $30 an hour. And this is US dollars. So if you've been spending more than, let's say, 10 hours in the last week doing the things I just mentioned, then now probably is the right time to hire in your business, because you could be making a lot more money in your business if you're focusing on being the queen bee. So the queen bee is the person who puts on that crown and does the things that only the business owner can do. All right. Things like strategizing, looking at the next big picture item, hiring, right? Working out financially what the next investment for your business is going to be, etc. Right? So financial matters, personnel matters, and strategy matters are queen bee. They are things you do when you're wearing your crown. When you're not wearing your crown, you're doing things like personally servicing your clients, looking for new clients on social media, posting, doing sales calls, etc. Right? Like all of those things are things that you can be outsourcing. So let's take a look at these different types of hires that you could be making in your business. The first type of hire, which is the one normally people think of first, is a full-time employee. Most entrepreneurs, when they're first starting out, are not ready to hire a full-time employee, and so they think that they're not ready to hire, period. But this is a big mistake, because there's actually 4 other types of hires you could be making. But let's talk about this full-time employee. So a full-time employee obviously is going to be wanting to work 40 hours a week, which means you have to have 40 hours worth of work for them to do. You also have to pay them fairly, right? Compensate them for their time. Usually we're talking about hourly work when we're talking about a full-time employee, unless they're an executive in your business, in which case they might be a salaried employee. But we're talking about wages, right? So you'll want to do some research. If you are looking to hire a full-time employee, you'll want to do a little bit of research around what is considered fair in that industry in your area. From state to state here in the US, it's different. You could be paying a personal assistant maybe $15 an hour out in the country, and then you come to downtown Chicago or you go to Portland, and 15 is considered a minimum wage there. So you'll want to think about that and where you're located, and just do a little bit of research. The best place to do research is on Google or on Indeed.com, and you can find out what the going rate is for the person you're trying to hire or the position you're trying to hire for. The second type of hire you could make for your business is a part-time employee, somebody who's going to work around 30, 35 hours a week. And so you don't have to pay them full-time. You don't have to worry about going into overtime with them, since they are less than 30 hours. And but again, we're talking about a W-2 employee, which means you have things like taxes to withhold. You'll want to consider things like a payroll software or system for your business. And there's labor laws to consider and things like that. Things you'll just want to research and come to be better aware of in order to make that kind of full-time or part-time employee hire. But let's talk about the other types of hires where you don't need to worry about that. The first one, and my favorite, and how I've started and run most of the businesses I've owned in the past, are using freelancers or contractors. So this is where you're going to take something like outsourcing the coaching, for instance, or outsourcing the web design if you're a web designer, or if you're a chef, you're going to outsource the actual cooking, right? In other words, you take the deliverable and you make someone else do that work, and you're handling things like the finance, the marketing, the sales as the business owner. So that first hire oftentimes takes the most off your plate. But because you're hiring essentially someone who is doing the main labor of your business, you do have to pay them a little bit extra, right? So the very first hire I made in my current business, this business coaching business, was I actually hired a contractor to do all of my web design, not my personal web design, but the web design that I was selling to clients. So inside my business lounge, the high ticket one-on-one coaching program I have, when clients sign up for that, they are actually signing up not just for coaching with me, but also for a done for you website, a done for you sales funnel, Facebook advertising, and things like that. And hey, Gold, it's good to have you. So I onboarded a person who would deliver that part of the service for me for less than I would sell it for. In other words, she's a contractor. She's not an employee. She's a 1099 member of my business. But anytime I sell that bigger coaching package, she does the delivery on all of the WordPress and the techie end of it, which is great, because not only do I not want to do that part, but I also know nothing about coding. So if it comes to, anything besides basic web design, I'm not your girl, but I could sell that in my business. She doesn't like sales. She hates it, actually. So it was a perfect match for us, because I'm selling packages. She's delivering them. I'm doing the part I'm really good at. I'm getting a piece of what gets sold, and I'm not having to do any of the delivery. So think about that in your business. Is there some place where you could easily outsource the deliverable and just make a little bit of a commission off of doing the sale of it, and serve your clients in some bigger and better way without having to have a W-2 employee? So that's the third type of hires. You can have a contractor or an expert, basically, who you are bringing in as a freelancer in your business. The fourth type of hire is an intern. And I put under intern like anybody who's trying to build their portfolio. So when I was a wedding planner, I had my wedding planning business out here in Oregon. Excuse me, guys. This was the first type of hire I made. Was I started hiring people who were interested in getting into the wedding industry, and I hired them for between $12 to $15 an hour to be wedding assistants for me. So they would learn the ins and outs of wedding planning by being my assistant on the day of. And I could charge a full day's worth of wedding planning for me and my assistant to come out to somebody's venue and run their entire wedding, and we would do all the setups and breakdowns. But I had this assistant with me, which made the work a lot easier. I was able to charge extra because there were two bodies, right, instead of just myself. And it made it so I didn't have to stay up until midnight cleaning up somebody's wedding. And in addition to that, this person got something as well, because not only were they being paid, but also they were essentially learning about the industry. So that's another great strategy, is if you're trying to outsource your social media, or you're trying to, do any kind of marketing or design work or something where someone might be still learning in that industry, and it's okay that they're learning, you don't need an expert for what you're trying to do, then that could be a really good hire for you, is go find somebody who is an intern, or they're on Upwork or Fiverr and they're still trying to build their portfolio, and you might end up having a much lower cost on that hire than you would if you were hiring somebody who's already an expert. That's another type of hire. The fifth type is a virtual assistant, and these range from appointment setters and salespeople to social media managers to pretty much anything you can think of. There's online bookkeepers, etc. So again, looking at where you're spending your time each week. Hey, McKay. Thanks for coming. It's great to see you guys. But yeah, so if you are looking at that time study you did at the beginning and looking at how are you spending your time each day, are you spending your time as a worker bee? And if so, how much of that could be done remotely by a virtual assistant? The nice thing about the virtual assistant is usually they're going to be a 1099. So you don't have to worry about workman's compensation. You don't have to worry about payroll. You're just paying them and issuing them a 1099 at the end of the year, right? And again, they work remotely. Oftentimes they're very professional. You'll want to have, if you are going to hire a virtual assistant, you will want to have a process in place for keeping them accountable. Excuse me. My favorite method is just using Upwork. Upwork.com is a wonderful platform. They already have built-in accountability, because when you pay, that money goes into escrow and you get to say that it actually goes to that virtual assistant after you've seen the results of their work. So they get that payment protection because the money is in escrow, so they can be guaranteed that you actually have the money, right? But you also get protected because you don't pay unless they actually get results for you. So Upwork is a great place to hire a virtual assistant. Another place, a great place to hire a virtual assistant, is within your own community. So if you have a Facebook group, if you have a large following on social media, I always announce to that following that I am hiring. And usually I get my best hires from the people who already follow me because they're already a part of my fan base, right? In fact, that's where Haley came from, which she should be on here live very soon in the chat. And she was probably, I think I announced that I was hiring about a month ago. And within about 4 minutes, she had already turned in her CV and said she wanted to work with us. So that's a really great example of why announcing to your group or to your community that you're hiring is a really good idea if you're looking for a virtual assistant. Okay, so those are the 5 types of hires. I'll repeat them again for anybody who's new. Full-time employee, part-time, a freelancer or contractor, an intern, and a virtual assistant. So of course they have pros and cons as I went over, but I want to talk a little bit more about some of the questions you should be asking yourself before you make that hire that will determine which of those 5 types is really the best for you. So step 1, like I said, is doing that time study, determining how much of your day is spent as a worker bee, actually servicing clients yourself, actually posting on social media yourself, doing sales calls yourself. Anytime when you're doing the work yourself, you're being a worker bee. How much of your time is spent tactically, meaning being the tactician, being the manager of your business, where you are running your team, you are figuring out how to make your goals happen, determining how much materials and how many people you will need, etc. All of that tactical stuff. How much of your time is spent on that, and how much of your time is spent being the queen bee, actually putting your crown on, or the king bee. Thank you, McKay. Being the king bee and actually looking at the future in your business and planning out, like, where do we want to go? How are we going to get there, right? So depending on where you're spending the majority of your time, I'm going to guess, if you're a solopreneur, that the majority of your time is probably spent as a worker bee, actually doing the work yourself in your business. If that's the case, then how much room do you have in your budget to pay this new hire, right? If you're thinking about outsourcing something or thinking about bringing on another team member, how much of your budget can you afford to spend on that? And the second question you should be asking yourself before you even consider which of those 5 types of hires you want to make is, do I already have a proven process for accomplishing the tasks that I expect this new hire to do? So if you don't have a proven process already, you'll want to spend more to actually hire an expert. But if you have a proven process, then all you need to do is hire somebody who's very willing and very coachable, right? So there's a big drastic price tag difference in between these two things. So for instance, when I went to hire my client success coach, which is Haley, I knew that I already have a very successful coaching method. I don't want anybody changing it. I don't want some expert coming in and giving their opinion. I just wanted somebody who would do it exactly the way I wanted it done. So I didn't need to pay for somebody who's already a coaching expert. Instead, I simply needed someone who had maybe a little bit of coaching background and who was very coachable and very willing to learn. So that right there is going to be the biggest dividing line in between, are you hiring a full-time employee or are you hiring an expert, right? If you're hiring an expert, you're going to have to pay a lot more, but there's also a lot less work on your end in terms of training and onboarding that person. So there's pros and cons to both, but you will want to determine that before you go hiring. The third thing you'll want to determine for yourself before you even place a hiring ad is, what is the purpose of this position going to be? Maybe you're thinking like, well, I have like 20 different odd random things that I want this person to do for me. Okay, well, you're probably looking at a virtual assistant then, right? Or some kind of organizer. But it's much better if we can determine one purpose for this position. That's going to help us determine like what their title is going to be, how much would be a fair wage for them, right? All kinds of decisions about the hiring process are going to come out of us deciding what the purpose of this person is. For example, the purpose of my client success coach is to ensure my client's success, right? Pretty obvious. So if I know that that's their job, then I can work backwards from that and determine what type of duties this person should probably take on. If you're looking for somebody who's going to be a receptionist, for instance, what's the purpose of a receptionist? A receptionist's job is not to just answer the phones, right? The purpose of reception is to fill your appointment book or keep you scheduled, right? So that means that they're not just responsible for answering the phones, they're responsible for outreach and booking your appointments and keeping that schedule full, right? So really looking at your business and determining, working with your business coach if you have one, determine what is going to make the biggest forward progress in your business. And it may not be the thing you think it is, but it will probably be based off of the purpose of the role you're trying to hire for. So what is that purpose? Why do you want to hire at all right now? Once you've determined that, the next thing is to outline what this person's key duties are going to be. So let's recap. We've figured out how much we can afford. We've figured out whether we have a proven process for what we're trying to do. We've figured out what the purpose of this person's role is going to be. Now we have to determine what their key duties will be. And this will help us when we're writing the hiring ad, when we're trying to attract the right person, when we're asking the right questions in the job interview, et cetera, we're going to need to know what their key duties are. So I actually have a very simple job description manual that I put together, which I can certainly share with anybody who's interested. So comment below. Let's have you comment job description if you'd like a copy of that template. But it basically has the purpose at the top, and then the key results that this person is supposed to get are next. Key results are sort of like the transformation that this person's supposed to cause. Every single point in your business is made up of transformations, right? So again, let's take a receptionist. The raw material that comes into a receptionist are phone calls, emails, client questions, clients walking in the door. If you have a physical office, right? That's her raw material. What is the transformation she's supposed to cause? The transformation a receptionist is supposed to cause is every person correctly routed and booked or scheduled for their next appointment with all the information into your CRM or into your practice management software or what have you, so that every person in the business knows what's happening with that client, right? So that's the transformation that a receptionist causes. A client success coach, which is Haley, right? The example I used before, the raw material that comes in is like onboarding clients, client questions, emails, chats in the Facebook page, in the Facebook group, right? Like all of this is raw material coming into her. And what is the transformation she's supposed to cause? The transformation she's supposed to cause is clients knowing, having clarity and certainty on exactly what they have to do next, right? That's her job in my business, is to cause that transformation from that raw material. So determine for your hire, this person, this role you're going to be filling, what is the transformation that they're supposed to cause, right? And that we call their key results. So you're going to have their purpose, their key results, and then underneath those key results are all the job duties that they will have. So those should be breaking down those key results into how they accomplish them, okay? Next, you want to set expectations. Expectations are very important. They help us build a strong company culture. They help us set do's and don'ts for the employees so that they understand what is and is not appropriate. You should involve these expectations should involve the communication style that is appropriate and is not appropriate, when communication should occur, if there's a specific time of week or time of day when you want them to come to you with questions and when it's not appropriate to come to you with questions. These types of expectations around your communication line between the two of you, between you and the employee, are very important to set in that job description so that everybody knows kind of what's supposed to happen, right? The next thing that you should include, and again, all of this is happening, you guys, before you even write the hiring ad, okay? The next one is, what method are you going to use to determine or monitor this employee's productivity? So there's lots of different ways of doing this. You've probably seen software online. There's like keystroke software for virtual assistants and stuff like that. I am really not a proponent of things like that because I feel like it limits creativity, and it makes people feel like they're criminals, right? So instead, what I recommend is using the statistic method, okay? Statistics are graphs. They are visual representations of work done. So find a way to monitor or measure the productivity of your employee using statistics. An example of this would be for a receptionist. Again, a receptionist statistic would be something like percentage of booked appointments, right? So out of the total booked appointments you could possibly fit on your schedule, what percentage of that is she keeping you fully booked, right? For a salesperson, the statistic would probably be sales revenue, right? Income brought in by their sales. For a coaching call, for a coach, it would probably be number of coaching calls done. So you want to keep some kind of measurable number that you can use to identify the productivity of this employee. This is going to be the best method that does not leave them feeling criminalized. It doesn't make them feel micromanaged, but instead allows a lot of creativity and a lot of origination on the employee's part while still making sure that at the end of the day, the business is getting what it needs out of each individual person. So determine what statistic you're going to use to measure this employee or team member's productivity. And lastly, you want to identify what the core values that you want your company culture to be. This is especially important if you don't have a team, because you'll want to be very careful about the personality type of the person you're hiring, right? Just to make sure that they're not going to be toxic or in some way lower the standards of your business. So that's all I have to share with you guys today. Hopefully I gave you a lot of food for thought. If you have any questions, please comment below and I will be certain to answer them throughout this week. There is a bit of homework that goes with today's training, so you'll find that in the workbook. If you don't have the workbook yet, please comment workbook below and I will make sure that everybody gets a copy of it. All right, thank you so much for coming. Tomorrow, I should probably talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing this at the same time as today, and we're going to be talking about how to attract the best candidates, meaning how to write the job, how to write the hiring ad, where the best place is to place a hiring ad, especially right now with the Great Resignation, how to actually get people to want to be hired by you and your team. All right, I'll talk to you guys then. Bye.